Well, welcome to Black Diesel Garage, guys. I'm Gabe, and today we're going to install these R D IDI Performance diesel return fuel line rail thingies for 7.3 IDI. This guy has a lot of good stuff for the 7.3 IDI motors. So I got these from R D IDI Performance, and we're going to put them on my 88 7.3 Ford diesel motor, or international, whatever. So I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to install them today and what comes all with the kit. So here's what the kit comes with. 2 fuel rails, very nicely machined billet aluminum. It says 16 O-rings, that's how many you need, but I got a lot more than 16 O-rings. I got 2 straight fittings. I got 4 90 fittings and 2 45 fittings and 3 plugs. Looks like it looks like he put the a spot for the crossover for the return in the middle of the system. It looks like it's plumbed where you can route it at the end, route it in the middle. Looks like you can do multiple things here. I'm going to run it how my truck is ran, except for I'm going to run my crossover in the middle rather than on the back end like these Fords come factory. That's what I got. The kit runs $260 is what I paid, somewhere around there. This is 2024. It's February, so that's what I paid. If you see this later on, who knows, the prices may have gone up. But they have, for like $70, you can get the factory setup, but there's just more spots for leaks. And I'm trying to make this truck reliable. I'm pipelining, driving from state to state. So I need to be reliable. And a problem with these 7.3 IDI Fords is that they get air leaks, especially on the return side of the system. So I spent the extra money and got the better parts to have a little more reliable. So I'm going to go show you guys how to get these installed. So here's the truck we're installing them on. This is a 96 body, but it's an 88 IDI motor is what's in the truck. So we're gonna go over here and pull the air cleaner off. Get that out of the way. Right here, here's the original plastic fittings. And sometimes they snap off on the end, sometimes they crack. A lot of times the O-rings just leak on these things, but there's all these spots in here where it could leak. You eliminate a lot of those with this kit. And factory, how this comes is, has this crossover right here that runs into the feed. This is a return line that goes back into your feed. It runs all the way across each injector. And then it branches back here underneath the cross. Mine has a little, not a T, but a 4-way essentially. And that 4-way, that side runs to my tank for the return. And also, there's return off the injection pump going back there. So essentially, this line is a crossover line through here. But they also spliced it into the return line for the tank that comes off the pump. Pump return line going back is teed in with the crossover line. And then you have it all the way coming back to a dead stop here, which technically it flows that way. What I will be doing is I will be having a fitting come out of this end to keep this here all factory. I will probably come off the middle of a rail, and you know what, I was gonna cross over through the middle here, but I think just because I have this connection back here, this little 4-way connector, I think I'm going to leave that the way it is, and I'm just gonna run off the back side of this. I'm gonna run off one of the back rails here and the back rail here, and just have them go into that is how I'll end up running these, I believe. I may come across the center, but that just sounds like more hose and harder kinks. So if I have all the stuff to do this correctly, I will plug the 2 center holes, plug an end here, and run across the back. I will see if I have the fittings to do that. I realized I forgot to mention the kit also comes with the rubber hose you need. And I looked through the fittings here. This is as if you were standing in front of your truck looking at the motor like I just showed you. I have a 90 to go in here. I have a plug to go in here. I have a plug here, and two 90s to cross into that 4-way fitting back here. So that should work for my original setup, how it is on my truck. And I have plenty of leftover fittings to run it different ways if I would have liked to. And I will say this kit did not come with hose clamps, but I'm gonna assume this is all pretty high quality stuff. I've never seen them little yellow rings, but my guess is it probably works fine without clamps on it. I'm going to go ahead and put clamps on it anyways, just because, but I'm gonna assume it's high quality enough to where you do not need them. And then I'm also going to assume you definitely need some sealant on this stuff so it doesn't leak, would be my guess. So I am going to use Teflon. A lot of people have different opinions on stuff. Some people like Teflon, some people like pipe dope, some people like both. I work in the oil field and on gas lines. We're supposed to leave 2 threads spaced of nothing, 7 wraps of Teflon, and then pipe dope over that. But personally, I just like Teflon, so I'll probably wrap all these fittings with a little bit of Teflon, probably around 4 times. Run them in to have them clocked how I want them, so I'm not trying to spin fittings around in the tight area on the pickup. And then once I have all my fittings set on here, I will get to putting the rails in the truck. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is remove my old system, which consists of taking off this line with the little hose clamp, unbolting all these injectors, which I believe are a 3/8 wrench, and undoing the 2 lines over there, and that would be it, I believe, and I can pull all those off. Alright, so you can see I have the old return lines removed. And I have also loosened up all the injectors so they can wiggle a bit, because the tolerance on this stuff is really tight. So if you don't have your injectors loose, you will cut the O-rings as you seat the rails, just because the tolerances are that tight. So loosen up all your injectors and take all your old O-rings off. And that's where I'm at. I'm going to replace all the O-rings, put Vaseline on all the O-rings, and then seat the rails and tighten them down. Alright, so I have the O-rings on. They're covered in Vaseline, and the injectors are all fairly loose. I would recommend pulling the injectors out if they're loose and they can wiggle. Like this one here is loose and can wiggle. This one here has a tiny bit of movement. I would back them all out equally to where they can wiggle and then seat the fuel rails. What I did, which I would not recommend this, especially on my back injectors, they weren't very loose, they were still tight. So mine are all jacked up out of here at different heights, and not all of them are equally loose. They all have a little bit of play though. I would recommend keeping them all the same height and loose, and if they're rough like mine and do not come out, or rough like mine do not loosen up, I would not have them all different heights. I'd pull them out and clean everything up is what I would recommend. But I'm going to be lazy and be an idiot and have to do this twice most likely. So we're going to have the trial and error and see if you can get these things on without tearing up O-rings, without them leaking by doing that. So we're going to leave everything the way it is, and we're going to see if we can get these on there. So without further ado, I'm going to leave the video on real time, at least for some of this, and start putting these on. So that rail is partially on there. Now I'm gonna get all my injector lines started. All right, so I have all the injector lines evenly touching the rail, and what I'm going to do is tighten them down probably a quarter turn at a time. I'm going to tap the fuel rail a little bit. You should probably use a rubber hammer for doing that. I do not have one on hand at the moment. And I'm also going to wiggle the injectors. So this way, I am just giving myself the best chance of not messing up the rubber O-rings. So I got this side, and I'll keep repeating this process while going all the way down with it. Alright, so the fuel rails are on. This side was pretty easy. This side over here, I ran into some complications. Nothing with the rail itself, all with the truck trying to get these on. You can loosen up the factory injectors with the factory rails, but these prevent you from doing that because they're in the way and because they're solid. But it's not the rail's fault to make it like that. It has to be in the way. But one thing that was in the way, I had to pull these intake bolts for this motor mount to get this motor mount out of the way. So so I could get a wrench on this injector because I couldn't come up anymore because of the rail. Then over here, I had to cinch this injector down, take the clip off, and bend it up so I could get my wrench in between here because I couldn't get a steep angle on my wrench anymore. Had to remove that. And then over here, between those two bolts to the dipstick tube, there's a bracket to hold the dipstick tube. It got in the way of my wrench getting on the injector from this inner side. It just wouldn't let it bite on at an angle because the bracket was too thick. So I had to loosen up all the injector lines, pop the rail up a bit to pull this bracket out because the tolerances are so tight. So I got that bracket pulled out. I am not going to put it back, and I'm just going to zip tie this dipstick up because this motor might not be staying in this truck. I also had to take off my oil filter to get to one of the bolts. But here is the bracket. It cups around the injector pretty tight, and my wrench, just at any little bit of an angle, would run straight into this to where I couldn't get it on the bolt unless you have room from above, but you don't have room from above when you have these injection rails on. So if you want to keep this bracket, what I would do is take a grinder and I would widen this out, or I'd take a torch and just cut out that extra material in here before you get the rails on, then bolt it back up. I'm just gonna leave it out and zip tie this out of the way. So that's all I had to move. Other than that, injection rails went in very smoothly, except for the fact that on this side, the injection lines are really hard to get on the threads of the injectors. So nothing to do with the product, just to do with injection line stuff, just because that's how they are. So went in very smooth so far. I think everything's seated just fine. I am going to go ahead and throw all the rubber hoses on. All right, they're 90% of the way installed. I do have a complaint about it. I did roll this the other way. They go facing down, and that line runs under all that stuff. So technically it would need to be that long. That one, probably about that long if I rolled it too. But that's all the hose it really came with. And I still have from here to here make of a connection. So it does not come with the amount of hose for that, which maybe it technically doesn't need to because it's just the kit for the fuel rail. So you could just say it just came with that just to cross it over. But one of my complaints would be that it's not the same size as the factory hose. You can see the barbed fittings here. They're bigger than factory, which is probably a good thing. But if you have to go to your factory connectors, they're smaller. So I wound up putting hose clamps down there just because the hose from those barbed fittings were too big to fit those fittings. And that, like I said, is probably not necessary. You probably could just cross it over in the center and you could probably just get a straight fitting through there. But I kind of wanted to put it how it was factory, so I just went to where it was. But I just find it being an issue that the rubber hose from here to here is bigger on the factory one, so you're going to have to hose clamp it pretty tight on this little fitting. And the factory fitting probably is the problem and not the best. I'd say it'd be great if the kit would have came with like this 90 and a piece to replace that maybe. But I don't know if all these motors actually have those parts. And then also, I don't know if you're going to find one of these. I mean, maybe they're an available part, but I doubt you can go you can go get these fittings from the hardware store. I don't know if you can actually find a fitting like that. That might be special to Ford. So it's most of the way. Still need to run that one with the hose it didn't come with. I need to do some other things to this motor. I'm going to do glow plugs. I'm going to upgrade my fuel system, try to make it a good, reliable, good running 7.3. So I'm going to do those other things. Then when I come back to the video, there will be a fuel pump in here and stuff, and I'll start it up so you guys can see if it leaks with me. So catch you back when we're firing this thing up. All right, so these rails are 100% installed. I have the line on it. I have the filter back on. I would say they look pretty good, and I do like them. They do not leak. My engine is covered in fuel on the top because I was doing other stuff with my fuel system, and I bled that and it went all over everything. So it's all covered in fuel, but the system itself does not leak. And I'm actually a little surprised I did not tear O-rings because, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's very tight tolerances, and I had some injectors higher than others, some lower than others. So given you do the right approach with having them just a little bit backed out or all equally backed out, these should go on without a hitch. So there's the rails. They're on there. They look good. They work good. This is Black Diesel Garage. Thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed it, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. And we got more content on the channel and more coming. So subscribe if you want to see more. And thank you guys very much. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya.